Ready to go? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to Yukon Township Planning Commission meeting, July 1st, 2026. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed. There will be no questions taken on the stream. With that, I'd like to ask if everyone has a chance to review the minutes of the June 3rd, 2026 meeting.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Can we get my name spelled correctly?
Okay, we're back up.
You and me both. I'm MAC. And that's okay. It felt wrong in my entire life.
All right.
Oh, MAC, not MC?
Right.
AEL, and it's
Scottish
Fernandez with an F.
Okay. And with that, we'll move forward. This evening, we were supposed to have 675 Peck Road come, but they are not available, or they did not want to have us look at their plans yet until they get them more revised. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get all this out. And with that, we're going to look at the industrial use ordinance. And our township manager will present that to us. Thank you, Bob.
Good evening and thank you. Tonight we're presenting a proposed industrial uses ordinance for your review and recommendation. Before we begin, I just want to say kind of from the outset, we do not have any applications, nor have we had any interest expressed in a data center or other large-scale warehouse. This is preemptive. This is being proactive. The ordinance that's before you has been under development for several months. During that time, the Board of Supervisors has had several workshop discussions to provide some policy direction to us, and we sent the draft to the County Planning Commission for their review as well, and we've incorporated many of their comments into the version that you have before you this evening. While this is your first opportunity to review the ordinance, the draft has gone through a thoughtful development process, and we're here tonight because your review and recommendation are an important part of the adoption process of this ordinance. So rather than walk through the ordinance page by page, I thought I could focus on some of the major policy decisions made in the ordinance and explain why we think those provisions are necessary, and then we can kind of jump into the discussion around the ordinance if that's okay. First, industrial uses have changed. I mean, there's no denying that. I think we can all, we've seen it firsthand. And the current zoning ordinance was written when industrial development really meant manufacturing and warehousing. Today's industrial uses cover logistics, fulfillment, cloud computing, AI processing, advanced manufacturing, data centers, and even more. And those uses have different operational characteristics. So the ordinance acknowledges that reality rather than trying to force everything into the same box. Not all industrial uses have the same impacts. So this is probably the biggest conceptual change. Instead of regulating everything the same, the ordinance differentiates between small logistics facilities and large logistics facilities, high impact logistics facilities, and data centers. Each has different review requirements because each really has different impacts. We've established objective performance standards, and I feel like this is really the heart of the ordinance. Instead of relying on subjective judgment, the ordinance tries to create some measurable standards that address traffic, truck circulation, noise, vibration, lighting, landscaping, emergency power, water, emergency services, and architecture. The goal really is predictability for applicants and consistency for the township. We recognize that industrial uses evolve over time, and I actually think this is one of the stronger innovations in the ordinance. Approval shouldn't necessarily last forever if the nature of the operation fundamentally changes. Truck trips could increase dramatically, electrical demands could double or triple, overnight operations could begin, major utility infrastructure could be added. These are all changes which I think we can all agree deserve township review. And we've recognized that some uses create unique impacts. Rather than making every industrial user comply with every requirement, the ordinance only applies certain standards where appropriate. So for example, data centers need to address cooling and electrical demand, generators, vibration, emergency response, water and thermal impacts, while high impact logistics facilities instead need to address truck queuing and trailer storage and loading and circulation. This keeps the ordinance proportional. We've tried to plan for the full life cycle. The ordinance doesn't stop at construction. It also addresses operational monitoring, post-construction verification, adaptive reuse, decommissioning, and financial security requirements. And finally, we've incorporated public transparency. We've incorporated requirements for a public information meeting prior to an application coming before you or the Board of Supervisors. At that meeting, knowledgeable representatives have to be present to answer questions from the public. They also need to establish a website and keep it updated. None of those are technical requirements. They're intended to improve communication with residents before the formal application process begins. At the end of the day, good zoning should be proactive and not reactive, and our responsibility is to establish the rules before a proposal arrives, not while we're evaluating one. And that's what we've tried to do here with this ordinance. And while I'm sure you all have specific questions or items that you want to discuss about what's been put into the ordinance, I just throw out a few questions for you to think about as we kind of discuss this. Does the ordinance create an appropriate framework for regulating modern industrial uses? Do the categories make sense? Too many, too few? Are there ones that we've missed? Are the performance standards objective and enforceable? Are we missing anything? Do the conditional use standards provide adequate guidance to future applicants and decision makers? Will this ordinance be workable for future planning commissions, boards, applicants, and staff? And is there anything you think should be modified before ultimately forwarding a recommendation to the board? We'd love to be able to have this before the Board of Supervisors at the meeting on the 13th of July. But what's important to all of us and what's important to the board is that we get this right. And so, you know, if you don't feel like it's ready, if we're missing something, if there's glaring omissions, let's talk about those things. If the bones of it are there and we feel comfortable advancing it to the board, then let's do that. And if there's minor cleanup and things like that, we can continue to work on those things after it's passed and in place. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and happy to answer questions, thoughts, etc.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I'll start off personally. I read over it and I myself didn't really have too many questions. I thought it was very good and I want to thank the township employees for doing the work on getting this together. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
On the third page.
I apologize. I'm walking down here like should be.
It's now I'm under so much pressure. 1, 2, 3, fourth page. It says use permissions and it says small, large, high impact. Is that defined anywhere?
It is. So it's actually towards the end, there's a definition section. And it's a really good question. So what we've done is, and I should also say, we've talked to industry about this, right? So we've shared drafts of this with developers and builders of industrial facilities. And so the three definitions for small, large, and high impact are: the small is anything 40,000 square feet or less, and generating less than 50 tractor trailer trips in a 24-hour period, as documented in a traffic study. We originally also included loading docks, like the number of loading docks. And what we realized is you can put a lot or a little in in a building, and that doesn't actually change the impact of the facility because it's really about the trip generation that's being created and how much space can really be stored. So we eliminated any discussion about number of loading docks. But then a large facility is anything over 40,000 square feet or projected to generate 50 or more tractor trailer trips. And then high impact is anything 100,000 square feet or more, or projected to generate 100 or more tractor trailer trips. And what's also important to note is, and Dan, our engineer, made a great suggestion on this, was the fact that, look, you may have a 40,000 square foot facility that's generating 150 trips a day. Well, then that needs to fall under the high impact. So it's the way it's crafted is it's the most restrictive applicable category is what it'll fall under.
Does it say anywhere in here that's the most restrictive or?
Yeah. Under the definitions.
Okay,
It's got.
Yeah.
okay, I see.
And so just kind of the use permissions there, think about it. What we're essentially allowing is 40,000 square foot facility up to 100,000 square foot facility is allowed in the Pickering Creek Industrial Park, the PIC zoning area, which is like Cherie Boulevard, across the street from Pickering Creek Industrial Park, and then and Eagle View is also allowed for both small and large, and then the high impact facilities are restricted to Pickering Creek Industrial Park and the Cherie Boulevard area.
So I just want to jump in, Bobby.
Yep.
Just for context here, the 40,000 square foot, so the last meeting, we had the Haywood Drive property come in. That second building was 35,000 square feet. So just want to give you a context. I still struggle sometimes with what a 40,000 square foot building looks like. That second building that they were doing on Haywood was 35,000 square feet.
Thank you.
So so the one going along with the tractor trailer trips that are used for that definition, that's tractor trailer trips. So what if we get somebody who's doing 100 Amazon vans type stuff? I mean, so from a traffic standpoint, you could have an extreme amount of traffic, but it's not tractor trailer. It's UPS size trucks or FedEx or Amazon size trucks.
Or minivans.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up
It's
as
personal
well.
cars. It's vehicles
Yeah.
versus deliveries for personal cars.
Right.
Do you just make it vehicles? I think it's something you got to think about.
We don't restrict that.
Right.
You don't turn around with the use here now don't have that. I mean, this isn't, we're trying to restrict or I don't know. I don't think that's something that you consider, right?
Well, but I mean, to the point though, it creates an impact,
Right.
right? And ultimately, that's what we're trying to regulate are the
But
impacts.
isn't the use going to inform the traffic impact study, which is going to then inform where you're going to go with that? I mean, because we have two more steps of regulation besides just what this adoption
Yeah,
is.
but a number of the regulations within this ordinance are based on what tier of facility you are.
Right,
And
I
that
understand.
definition is based on the trips.
And so, just argument's sake, if I'm building a 40,000 square foot warehouse, 35,000 square foot warehouse, and I'm going to have 35 tractor trailers coming into, or 25 tractor trailers coming into my facility in a 24-hour period. But I'm going to have 100 delivery trucks going out and coming back in, so 200 trips in a 24-hour period. That, as written now, that would be a by right use in any of those three districts. Yeah, it's a great point.
And I think it also, to even build onto that, it like it gives like time, you can't do deliveries in between 9 or you can only do deliveries between 7 and 10 PM. So that leaves, what, 8 or 9 hours that you're not doing deliveries. So it even condenses that rate of delivery, if you will, makes it go up even more.
Yep.
And what you described there is a pretty common facility with the Amazons and UPSs and FedExes of the world.
Right. I mean, so they would be, they would essentially be limited to.
The Jeff Jesser said, to what point is there saturation of facilities like that, service to Sarah, that's the other thing you have to figure out. Is the guy coming up 24 miles away, is there already only 5 miles? Not that that's a reason not to fine tune this, but it's also a reason to understand what what our expectations and what we're going to get.
Yeah.
Under this ordinance. And can you tell me the difference between PIC and PCID?
So PCID is equal view. Equal view,
Is Eagle View and PIC is,
like Cherie
Pickering?
Boulevard. No, PI is Pickering. And then Cherie Boulevard, Lineville Station Road, all of that is PIC.
well, I knew a lot of stations with PIC, we talked about it enough.
Would it be helpful for this section to have the Euclid map, or is that something that's referred to? And this is a supplement to the overall zoning that they could refer, a reader could refer to that.
Right, it would be part of the,
And is
For
that,
example.
are we changing any of those zones in the revision? Are they all staying the same in terminology and abbreviation?
no, I mean, generally speaking, it's staying the same.
That's the three that we're talking about, or
Yeah.
it's more of the residential ones that are changed.
We're all on change the PC one and PC two.
Yeah. That-
That's why it's not mentioned like that.
So just for orientation, here's the turnpike. The blue, like these blue sections is for PIC, right? This is PCID, this and all of this is PCID. And then here's PI. And so you've got 113 running here, got Route 100 running there.
A related topic I wanted to just mention is that the ordinance doesn't have any language as to how we will kind of look at or view anticipated like emerging technologies such as driverless or robotic or drone based delivery services.
And I'm not sure how much of that we can regulate. So I feel like,
Still be a vehicle trip, whether it's driverless or not. The drones, I don't believe we have any regulation of.
But we have regulation over them when they're on the ground, not when they're in the air. And in both cases, there's electrical charging systems and all kinds of like, accessories that go along with all that stuff.
So my initial thought on that is this is a living, breathing document. When
Yeah.
that starts coming about, this will be edited accordingly.
Well,
I think it'd be really tough for us or anybody to have to start turn around and put the regulations on that when with how, whatever, how fluid that might be here in the future.
I kind of agree and kind of disagree because I think we'll always be behind the technology curve. I mean, there's little robot Uber Eat delivery vehicles running all around Philly on the sidewalks, and nobody anticipated that, and it's chaos. And like we're never going to be like fully ahead of it. I don't know, like we can't regulate what we don't fully understand. And suggesting it'd be great to have some language in here that kind of like
Acknowledges
Covers.
that we are gonna have, that's gonna, acknowledges that you're gonna have to make alterations.
that, yeah, the technology is going to change, and we need the ability to,
Like a catch-all kind of.
yeah.
Reserve the right to, at the township's discretion.
So the only thing we have in the current ordinance right now is we have language for uses, similar uses as interpreted by the township. I forget how that terminology is written. So that's the only thing we could end up looking to possibly do is kind of put a catch-all phrase that gives us the ability to regulate those in the same way as this, but I don't know, I just think that it's gonna be, it will be really tough to draft language in there about regulations for that without, I mean, I don't know, I just, it's just hard, I think, have you had specifics or you've seen something here where, I mean, feel free to share, but I don't know what we can put into this ordinance to regulate self-driving vehicles or self-driving deliveries.
Well, right
Look
now,
at
since
it.
our intense use is all based on tractor trailers, like there's a little bit of a
Right.
gap there just when it comes to like smaller delivery vehicles.
Yeah, no, and I definitely think it's something, it's definitely something worth looking into. Like my head almost immediately went to, well, could you make the argument that the drone launch pads would qualify as a helistop, regulate helistops in our zoning ordinance? And so how would that translate? But I
Yeah,
think it's
well, yeah.
like we'd have to do a little bit deeper of a dive on that.
The industry is arguing they're not heli stops,
right.
and it's going to come into us, and it's going to be like the Chipotle lane. Remember that, where they're saying it's not a drive-through. It's like, and it's not going to be so easy. Like,
Yeah.
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 Whether by land, sea, or air, we're gonna have to have some ordinance that says we reserve the rights to regulate uses at these facilities, whether they be terrestrial or atmospheric. And then, I mean, you're gonna have to put it in there because you don't want to be behind that curve. You don't want these people launching 500 drones every morning over people's neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so that particular issue, the drones and driverless issue, I don't think is enough to hold up this draft, but is definitely something that I think we look at and in a very near revision, to incorporate. Yeah.
Because time is of the essence.
It's not so much that it's of the essence, it's kind of been hanging out there for a while
Yeah, it's
and
exposure, it's
Time.
exposed.
exactly. And we'd rather get something that maybe is a little imperfect in versus like if there were major issues with all of this, like we don't agree with these items and these items and these items, then that's good reason to kind of hold things up. But I think especially the delivery vehicles, I think that's a great reason for, hey, we've got to and kind of look for guidance from all of you as to, do we hold it up? Like, do we wait another probably 30 or 60 days, or do we get it in and try to have an amendment in the next 60 or 90 days that addresses kind of these cleanup things? but we can talk about that.
It seems like
later,
the
like,
things we're,
let's-
seems like the things we're bringing up
Just
are
incorporate that
lower
in.
risk items. They're more like fine-tuned wording, maybe except for the drones.
Well, if we made a motion that's recognized that there is still evolving language that was being addressed via amendment at a later date as things come
Yeah.
in, like that we may have, I won't say missed,
Yeah.
but may change.
Yeah.
I think that's
Reevaluating.
simple enough. I think that's simple enough and clean enough that somebody can't back and say, well, now you're gerrymandering me.
Yeah. What else?
Just had a question about the on-site power generation. So is that what you have?
Yeah.
So the 5 megawatt, wasn't sure what a megawatt was actually, so I looked up what Limerick produces and it's 2.3. Yeah, it's 2.3, right?
That's where I work.
Megawatts. So that seems like an awfully high threshold to require conditional approval, if I'm reading it correctly. What was the rationale for the 5 gigawatt? Megawatt? I'm thinking of like
Megawatt.
Back to the Future.
Limerick,
They're gigawatts.
Gigawatt, okay.
Limerick should be producing more than 5.
That's each unit.
So let's see.
Pico will give you 5 megawatts on a single circuit. Above that, they're going to start to get pulled off.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about this as well because I was going to recommend reducing that to anything above 1.5 megawatts, which is a huge difference.
Yeah, I
But
think
like
Great.
in
I saw
my
it.
experience building industrial facilities, a 1.5 megawatt generator, I can power a 200,000 square foot lab completely islanded if we lose power. So like that's a lot of power. And that's why I wanted to recommend one. And actually, if you want to buy a 2 megawatt or up generator, you're in the data center line. It's going to take you 2 years to get it. So like we're already in that realm.
Yeah, I think the 5 megawatt was a recommendation from, frankly, I forget where. We've looked at so many different pieces. But if you have a better number, based on your experience, we'll drop that in today. Like, that's easy.
Yeah, I think I looked up, it said like 800 homes, 5 megawatts could generate.
Which
is a lot.
Hmm.
I had another kind of going off of Mike's question, that with the energy, the generation, so it says, whatever, I don't even know, it says any high impact logistics facilities proposing on-site energy generation, whether accessory or principal, shall provide the following information. I guess like my question is there a reason why it just doesn't include like the small and large, like why it's specific to the high impact?
Size and scale.
Okay,
Like the thought being that a 90,000 square foot facility isn't likely to have on-site energy generation. But the bigger ones, it's entirely possible that there's.
So that can really depend on what qualifies as on-site energy generation, because something like rooftop solar, I mean, would based on this, and in future energy codes that have not yet been adopted by Pennsylvania, but probably will be in 3 or 4 years, you're going to start requiring rooftop solar as just part of base energy code. One of my comments on one of the first pages is about substantial changes being driven by things including installation or expansion of substations, battery energy storage systems, backup generation, cooling systems, or other major utility infrastructure, all of which are really standard things that we see in normal sized commercial buildings. And there isn't really a whole lot of guidance here as to like what the thresholds are for those systems to, to qualify for that higher level of scrutiny.
I mean, I think it's if they're changing it or installing it, we want to be able to review it, right? Like the purpose of that section is to be able to get eyes back on a change of use and be able to regulate that change of use as it relates to an industrial use.
Only for a change of use or for a new? a new facility.
Well, so we're covering those things in elsewhere in the ordinance for a new facility, but an existing facility, if one of those 9 things were to happen, an existing facility that meets the definition of an industrial use, one of those 9 things happen, it would trigger a review, a review, and then
These sections after building, this section shall apply to any new industrial uses on more substantial change, then a substantial change shall include, boom, and then it lists those items. So this is just listing the applicability of where this ordinance comes into place, and then it just gives the township the opportunity when there's a substantial change to a use to say, hey, this ordinance is applicable to you.
Yeah, I think one area that this touches on is the kind of the need to expand the definitions overall, because a substation can mean anything from a yard of, utility grade transformers to, if you're going to take a 34.5 kV circuit from Pico or 69 kV circuit from Pico, and you're building a 100,000 square foot lab building in Eagle View, which will qualify for this because it could be research based. That's not a high intensity use as far as the township's really concerned. But if you're taking a 34.5 kV circuit and you're dropping that down to distribute within your building at 480 volt, the transformer that does that is identified in the National Electric Code as a substation. But I don't think that's what this is intended to regulate. Same thing with battery energy storage systems. That doesn't necessarily mean your lighting inverter from your solar panels or the lighting inverter for emergency lighting. Like, there's a lot of opportunities, I think, where I don't think this is meant to apply, but it could.
So you're referring to substantial change, which is basically installation or expansion of a substation. So
Yeah.
what you're telling us here, there's what's considered a substation based upon another code here for that. I guess we don't have, and that's something as simple as enough of us putting in what we're considering a substation basically we don't have definitions.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think that maybe is where the feedback from that, the action item would be to add in what we consider the installation of a substation here for that as far as that connection, and separating that out from what we're trying to regulate versus what may be considered a substation for something that we don't really care.
In either case, I mean, the design of that facility is going to go through, plan review and everything else. So it's already going to get looked at, but not as a, zoning matter. Assuming it's, compliant with all other parts of the,
When you look at
like if you're going to build a 100,000 square foot lab building with an electrical substation in it, that's already going to go through plan review. And the building itself is going to have to meet zoning and everything else, but you're not going to pull out a transformer for special zoning review. Is what I mean. Yeah.
Just kind of circling back to Rachel's question about the on-site energy generation. Do we want to expand that beyond just high impact facilities, or and include?
I mean, I guess like it wouldn't hurt if you just removed high intensity or whatever the wording is. So
So it would be any logistics facility proposing on-site energy generation would have to provide all of that.
Perhaps.
yeah, I don't know I don't know enough to know if there's like a way for one of these small ones to get around that. I don't know if that's realistic or not.
Perhaps above a certain threshold. I think the intent there of the intensity is the 35,000 square foot warehouse. If they put in a 60 kVA generator out back just to power their like if for example, they got Kimberton Whole Foods in the other 35,000 square foot warehouse, they may have refrigeration in there. So they might have a small generator there just to back up the refrigerators, but that's not really at the scale that we're concerned about here. And I think that's what that is like intended to get at.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, so on-site power generation is defined as any system on the property which is intended to provide power during normal operations.
Normal.
normal.
Right.
So a backup emergency generator wouldn't fall into that. Wouldn't fall into that.
It could as written right now, because the definition is based on an emergency power source. And again, that's a National Electric Code designation. Emergency means one thing versus legally required versus optional standby. And it's just that I'm getting hung up on definitions right now, but it's because when we're getting into this, it kind of comes up. Just an opportunity to clarify.
Suggestions?
Yeah, so I mean, where I'm, this isn't from my world here, and I'm sure the council staff will, a lot of this stuff, I mean, you have a certain amount of expertise, you don't.
I know.
We recently.
I'm trying to offer.
I think I'm struggling here, and I'm sure the staff is to say, well, how do we make these changes, and what do we turn around and end up doing? I mean, from a zoning ordinance perspective, it really falls back on then the zoning officer to make interpretations that has the whole procedure here for appeals, and if somebody doesn't like that, how she determines that. But I don't think you can make perfect ordinance that addresses all those items. But if it comes back to the zoning officers, that interpretation of it here, and then somebody can say, oh, agree with it, go to the zoning hearing board and get that decision overturned here for things.
Yeah,
What if-
totally
but what
agree.
if- but what
I'm
if he
just,
agrees with something that's not,
yeah,
shouldn't be.
I'm just approaching it from the perspective of what Bobby said before, is trying to create a little bit more certainty for the, developers and design teams and the town and the community up front reading this who, like, since this is a draft and in front of us, I'm just flagging, hey, you can tweak the language a little bit. And it's,
That's why we're doing
Yeah.
this, right?
yeah,
But that's what he wants to do, be able to tweak it with your suggestions so we can keep moving forward.
But what we're struggling with right is actually hear your feedback. I grasp what 85% of it.
but I'm happy to write stuff up. I just,
Trying to put this back in language here, is I'm not sure how we address that. Is that
Yeah.
what I'm looking for guidance from that end? What do we need to do? Do we need to turn around in the on-site power generation? Do we need to change that language in order to make that clear? Things from.
well, that one was a really minor one, so.
Well, you just keep the elephant one bite at a time. Let's take each piece and just figure out what we're gonna do with it. I mean, if we're gonna go to 1.5 from 5, is that what we're gonna do? Is that something that you think?
I recommend 1.5, yeah. Above, no, not to include, but above 1.5 megawatts.
Right.
On-site section is exceeding 5 megawatts, so why don't you take that exceeding 1.5?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So with that change to 2, would you suggest then 4, just 5, if it qualify, if it's above 1.5, then all the items under C4 would apply, rather than high impact logistic facilities being the trigger? The trigger would be the,
I'm not sure where page we're on there, but.
so it's the next page. So you're at C2 where, where it had the 5 megawatts. And then
Section
number 4,
Which section?
Section 504.
I'm in 621504. 1504.
And then item 4.
Definitions, that's
Okay.
better.
Yeah.
It has the 5 megawatts in like 2 separate places, which I think is where,
Well, it might come up again in the context of data centers.
yeah.
And I think that C2 and that 5 exceeding 5 megawatts is, that separates it out. So it's not just part of like an accessory. It ends up becoming a kind of a separate review, right?
Right.
That's the kind of criteria there.
But is that on a turnaround? And I mean, the whole purpose of that section here, the C2, about if it exceeds 5 megawatts, it's not considered an accessory use and shall require its own approval process.
Yeah.
Here for this. But it's not limiting and saying you can't do that. It's just basically saying that you can't just, so at what point does it allow to, what megawatt amount is allowed to basically be just an accessory use to the industrial use, whatever they're proposing here? Are we saying that once it goes over 1.5, they have to go through the own approval process to manage to work for that generation? Right?
So then here's a question. How do we approach it from a zoning perspective if it's less than whatever threshold we set? Because then how does it matter that it's an accessory use versus just, if you have a standby generator hanging off the back of your building, that's not really, it's part of your overall.
It just gets reviewed and approved as part of the approval process. But once you
Yeah.
got above the ordinance was 5, then you have to go through a whole separate approval process just for that 5 megawatt. That doesn't just become an accessory use for this. It's what the intention is.
Right. So think about this in two segments, right? So there's on-site energy generation systems, which by definition currently is any system on the property intended to provide power during normal operations or having an aggregate rated generating capacity exceeding 5 megawatts. So I guess we're saying
Or,
same thing having. So it's or. So
okay.
if you're going to put a 5 megawatt generator on your property, well, that doesn't matter if that's a standby generator or not. That's going to trigger on-site energy generation systems. If you have any system, if you have a system that is, if you put a generator on your property that's 2 megawatts designed to provide energy during normal operations, that qualifies under the definition. If we change that, so if we lower the aggregate rating to 1.5, then it becomes any size generator, or to your point, even solar or battery arrays, whatever it might be, capable of generating power to provide power during normal operations would qualify. And then any size backup power more than 1.5 would also qualify and have to go through a separate approval process.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, like I said, I run a school, run 300,000 square foot schools on 3 200 kilowatt Jennies. Every system operating. You're talking about 3 and 4 or 5 times that. That's a lot of power.
A 1.5 megawatt generator is about the size of a school bus, just for context.
And so just to add to that, what the section 604E basically starts talking about, those on-site generator systems need to be certain distance away from a sensitive receptor, which is residential property, schools, and so on. Here for things. So those are the regulations here that we turn around and say here, if you're creating an on-site generation, energy generation here, whether that ends up being solar or a school bus for site facility here, you just need to keep that a certain distance away from a residential property and or park.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna hear
Yeah.
it when it starts.
But that's predominantly I'm concerned about normal operation. Standby is a little bit of a different category in here. And then I think let's give people a little flexibility with that. If they're if within 1,000 feet I guess they might have to go through a zoning process, but they could say, look, I'm taking these engineering controls. I'm going to provide this level of sound enclosure. We're going to put it inside the space. We're going to do something to mitigate that impact, right? Like there's still that opportunity.
Which is the case in here that gives you those requirements here for when we deal with noise and other usage, other restrictions in here. That's what this ordinance is looking to do. And there's requirements for noise studies to be done within 6 month period after the operation, begins here for this.
And our ordinance sets the decibel levels for all of that already. We don't have to worry about that anywhere. You already know it. Huh?
It's in here too.
Is it in here
Yeah,
too?
yeah, it's like 40.
So that's,
All right. I thought I read this
Is
thing
that,
3
is that
times. and
common
I didn't.
language, the measurement in feet, not like a radius? A
You
radius?
mean the 1,000 foot?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty
that's
standard.
common.
So
here it
that,
is,
that distance here is, I mean, so other municipalities, going to my planning commission, East Goshen, they're turning around and saying, where are these, what is those setback distances? And they pick their section of the township where they're gonna allow this. And the big debate here last month here for our planning commission was trying to set that distance of how far off from a residential area here. We're settling down based upon how East Goshen is set up here at like either 250 or 350 feet is where the debate right now is for that distance. And then just because we did 1,000, we were gonna restrict it and not allow it to go anywhere, and we felt that we would get overrun.
So that's like 1,000 feet from any point of that property?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, is it property line or is it residence? Or is it the building?
What is the point of the 1,000 feet?
Sensitive receptors.
From
Yes, the
the,
sensitive receptors, any residential use, school, preschool, so I forget, 'cause we actually did an exhibit here for the township staff here. We were asked, we took the zoning map and we actually drew in lines for where this is gonna end up being here. And I actually forget what we did, because we did from the zoning lines, and then we ended up doing from the properties lines with the park is where we ended up doing that. But so the instance where the blue line, at the top there, we did 1,000 feet from that zoning line, for the zoning district. We didn't pick the nearest house. We picked 1,000 feet from the zoning districts is where I believe how we broke that down and did that. We look at a minimum of 1,000 feet from a sensitive receptor. So I think that's worth looking at, just make sure that, can someone argue that the nearest house is whatever, they're 100 feet away from that zoning line, and it should it be 1,000 feet from the residential zoning district, and or a sensitive receptor if it's within like if you had a residential property in the PIC district that you're venturing from, where are you venturing that from? I'm not sure how that, I forget how that was broken in. But I think that's worth looking at.
There's a section later under the data center part about on-site energy generation. And that's 621.604 E1. And the last line of that says data center principal buildings shall be located between energy generation systems and residential districts or any other sensitive receptors. My concern with that sentence is that it's another prescriptive constraint that could create a conflict where people are trying to pick and choose which ones they're complying with, because it might not be feasible to comply with everything. And we might not get the way we want if we have more of a performance-based approach. I'm interpreting that as it's based on sound mitigation.
Yeah, you're trying to block the sound with the
Yeah.
building. Yeah.
But if we already have sound covered in a lot of different other ways, this could end up, we could be forcing people to site buildings in ways that don't make sense for other reasons.
Right. But you have 1,000 feet of parking lot for the center traffic for us either, but, yeah, I hear what you're saying. That makes sense.
I mean, you could even change the word to should instead of shall, so it's like
An effort
could
should
be
be made.
prioritized, but
Yeah.
doesn't like tie their hands.
But that's not how ordinances should read. Ordinance should not read that way. Ordinances are meant to define.
But if there's one that says it has to be 1,000 feet and it has to be within this, well, then like they're saying, oh, well, I'm gonna do this one because this one works better for me and I'm not gonna do the 1,000-foot one. And then we end up arguing about it. And
Column A.
we might not get what we actually, yeah.
Right, it's a Chinese menu.
I mean, so they would have to do all of
Right, the way it's written.
it. Right, I mean, they would have to do all of it, and if they couldn't, they could go to the zoning hearing board to get a variance from it, but they'd have to establish what their hardship
Yeah.
would be.
And that's not the worst thing.
Yeah, because then
That's a good
zoning
point.
can also kind of allow them to,
Right.
yeah, all right, let's like move things around and then.
But
yeah.
still get out a good result for the township. And at the
Yeah,
end of the
because-
day, we need a good result for the township.
And it then puts the impetus onto the zoning hearing to like look at it on a case by case basis specific to that exact proposal, so.
So are you all right leaving it the way it's
Yeah.
worded then? Okay.
So I do have one question in reading that about locating the systems between the principal buildings and any sensitive receptors. What if they're in other you're build it for the one that's to the west, but there's one to the north and you're not that 1,000, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just seems the geometry is going to create that requirement to create geometry issues. And that one to the north is 2,000 feet away and it's not even, so like this last sentence in that section does not tie it to distance. It's just direction.
Exactly.
I mean,
Let's do it.
Dan, Tara, correct me if I'm wrong, but my initial reaction is, then they can't put it there. Like, then they can't do it.
But if I
They need to
if
get
I
a
got somebody in the
variance.
middle of that PIC wants to put it in there and they're meeting the 1,000 foot, they're nowhere near, but
Right. So their backup generators are actually.
you've got, there's some sensitive receptor 2,000 feet away or 2,500 feet away
Generators.
that's not being addressed because you had to address the large one. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Take your usage at 15.
I mean, if they,
Usage rate, that's what they charge you.
if they couldn't provide that separation,
Eliminate that. But if you
then they
give them
wouldn't be able to
control of your
build it.
They can turn the generators on and bring.
Yeah, I just,
So I mean, we understand the intent of that. I mean, so we're going to the sentence that the data set principal building shall be located between the energy generation system and the residential district or this other sensitive receptor. So I mean, the intent of that here is we're trying to screen the residential uses from. I think that's clear on here.
with no distance restriction.
With no district.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
with no, yes. So the purpose of that is so you don't turn around and have this energy generating system. If they have the opportunity to put that on the opposite side, here, so that building becomes the sound wall for to the residential property here, that's the intent. And I think that ultimately here, if there's another residential property, well, we're 3,000 feet away on the other side, I mean, it's fine, it doesn't, I mean, you're still exceeding that 1,000 feet. I just think that you can't, I think the intent of that, people understand that, and they're gonna try to meet that intent. And I think the zoning officer has the ability to make those interpretations of the intent. So that's my take.
And just, so in the section here, you know, any application for on-site generation, this is for the data centers. It's saying any application. So let's go back to the logistics facilities. The trigger there, it's not any, it's any high impact. So you could have someone who has a normal, you know, the lower criteria, who for some reason builds a 1.45 megawatt thing. He's not having to jump through these additional hoops. Like, it seems to me it should be the size of the generation should be what dictates item 4 here, item C4, rather than the high impact, because I think you may miss. Because you have a high impact facility, it's only doing, you know, 0.5 megawatt. And, you know, that's They were just having to do this just because they're high impact, and the high impact maybe because they have a lot of vans. That's really not tied to the generation itself. I just think logically, it makes more sense to tie it to the size. If you're gonna winnow it down to limit it with the logistics facilities.
So I think that kind of goes back to Rachel's comment about the on-site generation. And so we can just remove the high impact.
Yeah.
And just put any.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what, yeah, that's what I was,
You're talking about C4, right?
yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I was on the right page.
Keep it coming for us, guys.
I have a lighter comment.
Lighter?
Lighter, it has to do with the public. I looked at the Chester County Commission review letter. At the end, it says some recommendations as far as for the public meeting, which I think is really great that you've added in. Is that incorporated yet? Would they?
Yeah.
Okay, I just thought maybe there should be one, depending on how you feel. Because this is gonna be a hot issue when it comes up. And it's gonna be a public conversation. Questions from the public. Should that be questions from Euclid Township residents? Or that's up to you. I'm just, knowing how, how this brings out crowds.
Mhm.
Did you want other county residents involved? Or other townships?
I think it's a fair point. I guess my initial reaction is a little bit of hesitation to limiting that, only because, let's say, I don't know, let's say something ends up on the border with West Pikeland Township.
Right, right.
We would
And it
want
affects them.
those, right, like I think we would want the ability for them to come. And, the reality is, it's not the township hosting the meeting, not the planning commission, it's the developer or the applicant hosting that meeting.
Right. And responsible for the venue.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I had a comment on the lighting and visual impact sections. They're, I think, very similar between the industrial and data center sections, but my comment kind of applies to both, and I'd like to, lighting shall not be used to illuminate building facades. So I don't want to have like a big warehouse, with just all lit up with huge signs all over it. Which I don't know if this does a good enough job of, unless it's a little dense. I don't know if it kind of prohibits that. And I also want to, and this may be covered in another zoning code that would still apply to this from another section, but signs should be limited in size. Like there should be some maximum threshold. Because if you have a 800-foot long building, you don't want to have a,
That would all be covered under our sign ordinance.
And we do have a whole separate lighting section in the zoning ordinance, section 615, that they would still have to comply with.
Okay.
Regardless.
Okay.
And a sign choice.
Yeah.
Noise and vibration. There's a post-construction noise study 6 months later. I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm concerned that in the data center world, a lot of times servers and equipment are brought on in a phased approach. And that's kind of hinted at in a couple of other areas of this. And 6 months in, depending on how they fill up a space and what type of facility it is, they might actually not have very much load at that time, so they wouldn't have as much equipment running.
So our planning commission, when we were going through ours, we've actually had, when the models came back at 6 months, if I'm living next, so they're actually talking about trying to reduce that even less than that. Because then if all of a sudden you're living next to this thing, it starts operating, and you got now with 6 months for them to do this study to come back and say they're not compliant anymore. So they were actually reducing that down to a 90 days, period here. I guess my feedback on that one would be with that is to come back and say that, hey, you have to do it a minimum of 6 months, here for that, but the township can require it more if a year from now, if you're creating more of that online, from that aspect. So I don't want, I just can imagine if all of a sudden I live next to this and said, wow, this is really bad. And I say, okay, we'll get to this, you gotta live with this for 6 months before you.
Yeah.
Or if we extend it longer than 6 months.
I agree with the approach. I think it's good to have it, no later than the first 6 months. You have to do it. But if your IT load is only a certain percentage of your, anticipated build out, you might have to go back and do it again as, subject to township approval or something.
Or could you state it where, any change in capacity, you have to reevaluate the noise level?
I think G covers that though. Because you can go back in for a number of different reasons. Conditions.
Yeah, it totally covers it. You're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, totally covers.
Yeah, I think, G2, if they're operating at 30% for the first 6 months, and month 8, all of a sudden they fill the rest of it, that's pretty much a material change. Or if they expand it somehow without us.
Read everything in a brain.
I only read it once.
The township,
That's good.
will the township know their percent capacity? Is that part of the evaluation?
Not necessarily having complaints that continue, those dialogues will have with the applicant here and say, here, they're gonna come back and say, hey, we hit the 6 month period, you want us to do now? And we're say, oh, nobody's had any complaints for this, and we're not at full capacity. Can we wait another period and ability to that? So those are just open dialogues we have with the property.
The other thing is we could require a second post-construction noise study 24 months after issuance of the CO.
Well, I think you're covered between public nuisance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
G covers it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Because
It's complaining right now.
and if they've increased their load and their demand,
You'll know.
Yeah.
Anything else? Lots of notes.
yeah, I got more. Along those lines, new thought, benchmarking. Typically not yet a requirement in PA suburbs the way it is in Philadelphia, but for these types of properties, it should be, or they should be, users of any of these types of large facilities should be submitting, through Energy Star Portfolio Manager or something like that, energy use to the township. Because that would help then reveal what they're doing.
So you're saying that they need to submit energy use data to us on a regular yearly basis or?
Yeah.
Where would you suggest that be added in?
Under energy and utilities.
I think an early draft, we had something similar to that. And we had some conversation around, okay, they submit it, and then what? Right? Like it's a little bit of not entirely knowing what we're looking at, I think.
Well, benchmarking, if it's out of line with the other facilities that are running similar processes and everything else, then you can see that and say, why are they 80% more energy usage at this facility than a similar facility over here? Benchmarking is just a method of gathering information. So then you can figure it out.
Yeah, but also if you see year over year, a 50% increase in electrical consumption at a facility, that's, maybe constitutes a material change to their operations that could trigger some other part of this that you wouldn't otherwise necessarily have any optics on. So you might do nothing with it, or you might have something.
And when we have that information for water and sewer ourselves already, we have that. We want to do that as well. Water usage specifically, I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I mean,
Sewage, you're gonna know.
yeah, and for commercial facilities, we determine sewage usage based on water usage. So we get the water readings from the water company.
Because that's the only place the waters can go.
I'm a member of Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. They have a working group that I'm a member of related to rolling out benchmarking for the whole, southeastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. That would basically require utility benchmarking for all commercial buildings, non-residential commercial buildings above, I think, 30,000 square feet or something like that. So it's something that's like evolving and moving,
Emerging.
and these larger operators are familiar with it. It's just when we're talking about these really high use intensity type facilities, it's a reasonable ask from the township.
Yeah. Can incorporate that.
Anybody else want to turn? Sticking with energy and utilities under data centers, section 621, 604. A, the applicant shall identify the primary operational purpose of the facility, including blah, 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 a whole bunch of examples up to date. But obviously could change over time as, what's hot changes. But I just want to point out, in many cases, a developer or builder or private equity firm is going to have absolutely no idea at the project inception what they're going to do. They're going to identify, hey, maybe I can get power or gas or something to this site. So I'm just going to start building there and I'll find a tenant as I go. So the question then is, what's the purpose of the question? What does the township plan to do with the answer? And how are you going to answer? Or is it acceptable if you're going to get an unknown at this time? Does that matter?
I mean, I know my thought was it prevents exactly that situation, which then kind of in a way then prevents the issue that we have on Cherie Boulevard right now with a really big empty building because there's no user for it. And so similar, like, we really want, this is kind of a way of saying, you got to know what you're doing with it. Like,
Yeah.
we're not doing spec here. Like,
So if I'm going to put my developer hat on for my day job, and if I thought I could get power to a site and I thought I could do something, I'd think, okay, most likely the pro forma for this is like, I'm going to be going to, let me pick one at random here, artificial intelligence processing. Let's say it's, a 30 megawatt facility for inference running, not programming it, right? So that means my customer is going to be Meta or Anthropic or ChatGPT or, one of those, right? So I'm just going to put that in there. And I might not have that yet. It might still be spec, but like.
which is fine. And then
Okay.
when it ends up not being that and it's something else, you got to go back through the review process.
All right, fair enough.
And I mean, so the warehouse project here, they don't have a tenant. There was talk of having a tenant come in and they looked at the trip generation or how much traffic they're doing and saying, we would possibly generate more traffic. What do we need to do? So that's kind of come about here for this, because they got approved for this size building with this trip generation. And now they had a tentative, if nothing's been submitted here, but they reached out to us and said, hey, we have a user and it doesn't look like it's gonna meet the requirements of that trip generation. They were actually generating more trips. And we kind of said, well, you gotta come back in and show us this and eventually go through an approval process for that. And that's kind of like the same example here for this. They went through and did that on spec and saying this is how much traffic they're gonna generate, and now they're considering more. Here, we haven't heard anything from them in a while, so we think that might be dead, but that's the same process here. They're gonna get it approved under what they think they need, and then if they need something more, they're gonna come back through and show us, hey, this is the process.
What would have happened if he had not told you that he was gonna have more trip generations? You would have had to go through some iterative evaluation process that would take in some period of time?
They had to do a post-traffic study
Okay.
also, so we would have found
And
out.
that's in here as well? It's all what you need.
In the same section, projects shall be designed and constructed to meet the current USGBC LEED Building Design and Construction Data Centers rating system. I just want to point out, it's saying that they must be designed and constructed to meet the standards, not actually be certified. And there's a difference there. I've done projects like that where, we had similar things. And so we would kind of fill out a LEED scorecard and say, yeah, we did this, this, and this, and nobody was really checking our homework. It adds a bunch of cost to a project to go through the full certification process, but I just want to point that out, that you're not necessarily getting the same thing.
Would you prefer that it be certified?
I would, yeah, but I'm not gonna.
We had.
I just want to be clear on the language of it, yeah.
They want to prove, when we're talking about energy usage, the construction there and the process of being certified for things, and they said it's expensive to go through that and end of the year, so.
Yeah.
I agree, I mean, if they're going through this here, I think.
And they commit.
They should do a certification.
Yeah, and Rockwell committed to the certification, not just the design.
For the.
Yes, yes,
There's a pushback, here for that, so.
yeah.
Well, which rating are we going to go for?
That's right there.
It's listed in there.
BD plus C.
Okay.
Specifically the data centers rating system.
Right.
Correct.
Or that. Or equivalent design standard as approved by the board, which just, that's a, an opportunity for them to say, do another one, because there's a bunch that are out there. It doesn't say it has to be, silver, gold, or platinum,
That's right.
LEED certified or anything. It actually doesn't say it needs to be certified at all. It just says meet the standards, which is why I bring it up.
Do you want it certified to a certain standard? To a certain level of the standard?
I want to be reasonable.
Sure, does that cost?
Yeah. These are all things we already talked about. Water usage. The data centers, J, water usage. Number one is you can't use private groundwater wells or direct withdrawals from surface water as its primary source of water for cooling purposes if a public water source is available. And I'd like to understand how availability is established. Because that could be construed to mean you already have a water main on your site or in the street outside it, or it could be a mile away and they have to pay to have Aqua run the line, but that's a little bit.
Availability. I think all of you is within the Aqua water service here. So there's certain municipalities that we dealt with that don't have,
Yeah.
they're not listed in the service area for these public utilities.
Right. I'm just thinking, if I were to try to build an addition on my house and you told me I have to get city water, I can't use my well anymore, I'd say, well, it's not available because I'd have to pay Aqua $200,000 or something to run the main down my street, which is not there right now. So that's a different level of availability, which I would expect an operation like this would have to go through that process.
Yeah, obviously, this district here. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if that's really an applicable issue here. I think we have public water everywhere. I mean, I guess I don't know. What's in line with Station Road?
Aqua's got a line all the way done.
So I think that ultimately here, I don't know, looking at the map here, I don't think there's a spot where we don't have public water. So, and then we could interfere.
Sewer, right? It doesn't have sewer, but it has
A separate provision.
public water.
We could get rid of the, in public water sources, well,
I think that's the cleaner way to do it.
just nothing. They're public water. This isn't, they're not building this in the areas where we have wells, in the township where we have wells.
So we would get rid of if a public water source is available. Right, so basically you can't use private groundwater wells or direct water
Yeah.
withdrawals.
And if there were some specific condition, then they could go to zoning.
Right.
Do we need to spell out anything about available and capacity is available?
we don't control. I mean, it's gonna be opposite back and say we don't have. Here for that, so I don't know if we can turn around and, I guess, I mean, ultimately, if public works is available, I guess if public work, if. I mean, I don't, my take on it is I just think you don't end up allowing,
But if there's not capacity, then they
Yeah.
can say it's not available. They can say we can now drill wells.
Yeah, I think you put a period after purposes.
purposes, I think.
That's the,
Different,
Yeah.
or so, well.
Nobody wants them drilling wells.
No.
but then you need to modify the wording in J3 because it says if the proposed source is from a public water system. So I think you strike that first up to the comma.
But then for it, too, because they, if the data center is to like not
Yep.
public water supply, water source. So I guess let me go back to the if a public water source is available, we know public water sources, if the source sources are available, we can have it in all these districts and needs availability here. But Aqua may some money to come back in and say we're going to pass it. Are we, I mean, you're gonna come back and say, well, it's not our problem. Right. We'll go.
You have them drilling wells in your local neighborhood's aquifers. Next thing you know, your well run dry. You know, we don't that's why we don't let spring water companies come in here and drill.
Yeah, I mean, my initial take on it here is you gotta use public works and just edit J 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, wherever to basically just clear up and say, hey, I mean, so number J4 is providing a water feasibility study, not applicant, because you're using public water.
Yeah, so for J4 would just disappear.
I think.
Good catch.
Number 2. Data centers shall be designed to include a closed loop water circulation system to cool data center processing equipment. And they can provide an alternate if they can use less water than a closed loop system. I think that's a little problematic because I think we're looking at it in terms of the wrong language, the wrong approach to that. Closed loop can mean a lot of things, a lot of closed water loops in buildings. I think what we're trying to prevent is the use of evaporative or other once-through cooling systems. So, I mean, if you put a cooling tower on a building, for instance, you are circulating water through it and you're introducing additional water and then you're going to evaporate that off. And the phase change is what does the majority of your cooling based on the temperature difference between that water you're circulating and the wet bulb temperature outside, which is like your humidity. And that's what data centers have this reputation for using tons of water for. It's that evaporative cooling. A lot of closed loop systems mean you're going to run water through a dry cooler where you're not throwing evaporative water on it. You're just running it through a fan. But you have other loops that are on the other side of a chiller or another piece of equipment that are also closed loop. But technology is changing so fast, now they're eliminating the chillers, you're going straight to atmosphere, or you're using dielectric fluids that the server racks are dipped right into, and it's all changing so quickly. I think I'd suggest a more performance-based approach that's intended to limit how much water the facility uses overall, one way or another. That could be total gallons per day limitation. It could be gallons per day per megawatt or gallons per day per acre. But trying to set some other threshold there, or just say no evaporative cooling. I think closed loop though is misleading.
Is no evaporative cooling? Could that term stay current? What you're saying is
For the most, yeah.
evolving.
Yeah.
That's
So that's in some sense, plus that does not rely on evaporative cooling. Sorry, closed loop system does not.
Yeah. Yeah. I throw once through cooling in there too, which is not something anybody does other than in emergency conditions anyway.
Did you hear that last part, Ethan?
Hmm.
Did you hear the?
That was an afterthought. That's-
Okay,
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I don't know where to set those thresholds,
Yeah.
is where my mind is on this. And to be honest, it's just above my knowledge here to come back through and make this recommendation here. I think a lot of this language, there's lots of models out here for these data center, ordinances here I mean, ultimately here, we're saying there should be a closed loop system here, and they may propose other alternative systems that can be approved here, to satisfaction of the township engineer, which we have to have a third party consultant on that, 'cause it's not something expertise level,
Yeah.
for that aspect, so.
I mean, we can keep it as it is. We add a couple words in there. It can say closed loop if it's a closed loop heat rejection system that does not rely on evaporating water,
Okay.
does not consume water in order to, achieve heat rejection.
And why are we, what is it? Help me understand here, what are we trying to solve? We're trying to solve that we don't want the evaporative cooling because, I mean, that's what, just,
That's what consumes water.
You're dumping water into a cooling tower, evaporating a lot of hot water off and adding cooler water into the atmosphere.
and if this is a small enough facility and Aqua has plenty of more, there's not a water usage capacity issue, is that, I'm just trying to understand here what we're trying to solve here and I mean, the water consumption. I mean, more water consumption here and, I mean, from a township perspective, the disposal of that water impacts us from a sewage management here and treatment of sewage here from that. But if Aqua has plenty of capacity here and this facility here is burning it off, what impact should we have on that? I'm asking that
You
question
will-
here, so I don't get.
Evaporative cooling towers you need to blow down them because as water evaporates off, that leaves behind the minerals and other materials. So then you got to flush all that stuff down the drain. And the, practices today, push for using conductivity sensors in the basins of the cooling towers, which measure, how much the concentration of minerals is building up in there. And then that reduces the amount you have to flush down the drain, but you still have to do that. So besides just increasing the amount of water you have to bring into the facility to evaporate off to do your cooling, you also have additional sewage flow that you wouldn't otherwise have. And we're talking about millions of gallons.
Right.
So at the end of that paragraph, at the end of number 2, would we be safe in just simply saying, under no circumstances is any cooling system which uses evaporative technology allowed?
Of a certain size, yeah. About 500 tons,
500
something like
tons.
that, yeah.
So under no circumstances is a cooling system which utilizes 500 tons or more of evaporative system allowed.
I think since we're just staying on data centers and I'm thinking about other stuff, but if we just stay on, because that's already under this, right? Data center shall be designed to include a closed loop water circulation, a closed loop heat rejection system that does not rely on evaporating water.
Heat rejection system?
Yeah.
That does not,
Use evaporative cooling.
Yeah, that does not use evaporation to cool data center processing equipment. And then we can keep the rest about alternative technologies and stuff.
are there other? Okay.
See, because as written right now, I might have a rack with a fan and a chilled water coil. And that chilled water coil has water that circulates in a closed loop between it and the chiller. And then I have another loop that circulates open between the chiller, the other side of the chiller, and the cooling tower. But I'm going to say, well, my chilled water loop that goes to the coil that's in the rack, that's a closed loop. I have a closed loop. And that's the opposite of what we want here. So
So data center shall be designed to include a closed loop heat rejection system that does not rely on evaporative cooling to cool data center processing equipment.
Yeah.
And then,
But when are we gonna still put the less than 500 ton evaporator?
Nah, not for data center. I think we can talk about what a data center is when we get down to the definitions, because there's and I don't have a lot left, guys. There's an exclusion there about
Good nuggets.
Yeah.
That's the thing, we don't want to miss any.
Data center. The definition shall not include accessory server rooms, telecommunications equipment, or data processing facilities incidental to a principal permitted non-industrial use. I don't know what those other sections,
What number is that? So just so everybody can follow along.
section 2, following terms to the definitions.
it's towards the end of
beginning?
the.
That was all the way at the end.
At the
I mean,
end.
so the goal there was to make sure that a company with a server room
Yeah.
isn't going to fall under a data center definition.
Yeah.
That, you know, Oracle putting a facility in Eagle View is okay, that it's, you know, it's not a huge facility. It's something that's just serving their office or something like that.
Yeah, I just flag this as a question is, does this definition enough, or do we need to put a megawatt or kilowatt limit on it before you start having to think about all the additional stuff?
Well, yeah, definition will include accessory server rooms below, is that what you're saying, below
Yeah.
some number? And there's not other places that talks about 80%, 20% of what you're doing, but it probably is a belt suspenders type of thing. That doesn't. There's nothing wrong with belt and suspenders. I'll lower the side.
I don't know. We can leave it alone and just think about it.
For next revision of this, would it be a meeting like this, just going through revisions and then sending it to the Board of Supervisors again? So,
We need section 4 then.
No, that will disappear.
The one about the non-public water sources.
Yeah.
it's going away.
Two more comments from me.
Go ahead.
Thermal impacts for data centers, 621.605. Evaluation of potential offsite thermal impacts, including plume/heat discharged and localized heat islands under representative seasonal conditions. I'd like to spell out a little bit what the expectations are for that evaluation, more clearly define it. I think it's going to require CFD modeling. And this is something else that could require pre and post studies. There may be a modeling standard for this. I would need to research that though.
If they have based on modeling standard, but it can't be TBD, you gotta get something.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was the model the C, what was the thing you said, CD?
CFD, computational fluid dynamics. So they basically have to take a computer program and, you know, put a load at that location and then model how that heat plume would actually move. That's my suggestion.
So, is there like a standard here that they need, I mean, that's a set standard here for things. Is there like a source, whatever, that we could just reference back and say, hey, I mean, do we just list that as a CFD? They need to, I guess I'm just trying to figure out how that gets worked.
Yeah, I don't have a standard for you that define, like, we should reference.
I think we've got to do some research on that.
I'm just trying to, try to get, like, so it needs to be produced at a level that I mean, it already says it's got to be prepared and certified by a professional engineer, but you don't want, somebody with a PE license just stamping an Excel spreadsheet, like, and there's not actually that much. Just trying to set a standard for the level of analysis that we're expecting.
And it should be a pre and post, right? I don't see post on there anywhere. Can we measure that afterwards? Is that what you
Yeah,
suggesting?
I'd suggested it, but I'm struggling to think about how it would actually be done in practice, like,
Yeah.
out there with a thermometer, trying to make sure there's no heat island building up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Yeah,
The pre is basically would be more so it's an existing use that now being changed. I mean, if it's a vacant building, I'm just wondering I guess you're doing the pre, you're basically saying, hey, this is what you're modeling against here for things. So this is the baseline.
You just wanted to let that go.
for an existing facility.
It has the word monitoring in there though. An E. I would assume monitoring is like a longitudinal type.
That's good. Yeah. If required by conditions of approval, that gives us a ton of wiggle room in interpretation. So, yeah. Last couple things in here in emergency services. Coordinate with the township fire marshal to ensure adequate radio coverage. That should also apply to large warehouses, not just data centers. If it doesn't already, I don't remember seeing that section. And then,
Number 5.
yeah. C,
C.
yeah,
606C.
yeah. Battery storage, that's something that requires specialized firefighter training. So if they're including that in one of these types of facilities, that kind of ties back in with A up there. But that's a big flag that, local firefighters need to be aware of and trained on those systems because they're typically lithium ion and require special firefighting techniques.
We have that under number 4, under 606. Ensure all first responders are trained at least annually on the installed safety systems and safe operation inside the data center.
It was pretty much in there. The firefighters were training.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just identifying it as a hazard.
Right. On your list?
Put it down. Thank you, everybody.
You have a lot of good points. We're trying, that's what we're here for. Let's try to come up with the right, all the good ones.
I was wondering if there's any emerging industry groups that specify that are like sounding boards for this type of construction development. Like, what are the national associations related to this area of development? Are there any?
There is one called 7x24, but it's a data center trade organization that wants to build as many of these as they can everywhere. So it's a little bit of a different thing. Yeah.
Kind of one-sided, huh?
Well, that's there. That's it. Yeah.
Are there any federal regulations or state regulations that need to be referenced.
Johns Hopkins University has a paper out that does recommend steps or kind of policy provisions that should be made at the state level. I kind of reviewed it for this, but it doesn't really apply to the municipal level. There may be though. I just one I know of.
Okay. Do we have any other comments, questions, answers? Up and down?
I'd like to make a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Like to make a motion that we would recommend this draft to incorporate the edits discussed tonight. Also with the understanding that some of the language may be reviewed in future revisions for board adoption as drafted, and may include additional comments that arise.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. And we got a green light to go ahead. Thank you, everyone, for your input there tonight. Good to go. With that, do we have any zoning update? Or
The zoning task force did not meet this month. We will be meeting again in August, but I just wanted to give you an update that the the Chester County Planning Commission is going to be attending the board workshop meeting next week to discuss the potential for overlay districts within the township. So that meeting will be at noon next Thursday, if anyone's interested. So we'll be able to give more of an update next month based on what's discussed there.
thank you for that update. Is there any comment from the public?
Any public?
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I have just a couple of things. On July 7th, there's a hearing in Westchester for added second amendment to the agreement of sale between Rockwell and Downingtown School District. The amendment deals with the reduction in price based on the acceleration of settlement, which I find interesting, seeing how they don't even have a PRD approval. So I'm going to take 3 minutes here and try and do this fast. 2006, the school district bought the ground. I was hired in 2006 to be the director of capital projects, so I was involved in this. The township at the time, school district was hoping to put a third campus up here. The township at the time was reluctant to host another campus for Downingtown. The township bears a large percentage of the borough of the Downingtown School District's facilities. Shimona Creek, 6th grade center, Euclid Hills, Lionel Elementary, the middle school, the high school, and then Pickering is right on the border. No other township has more than one facility other than the borough. Added to that, they put a codicil in that agreement of sale trying to place a natatorium on this property. And no other school district, exception of Coatesville, that has a natatorium in Chester County. And I don't understand the reason. There's 4 YMCA's within 10 miles of the borders of the school district. There's 15 or 20 private swim clubs in that same area. I just don't understand why there's a desire to have that. I know they want an exclusive use of it, but when I go up there to the Y in Lionville, that pool is empty 90% of the time. I understand that went through Hankin from 2011 to 2015 had an agreement of sale. It was a fairly nice looking 500 house development. The township supervisors had a reluctance to change the zoning at that time and wanted to stick with the PIC. Then we had Audubon that was going to do warehouses. They quickly realized it was fiscally unfeasible. Then we had Carvana trying to pay $92 million for for that piece of ground, and then they were shut down real quick by the home office. Now we have Rockwell, who is a developer. He is not a builder. You just don't believe him. He's not going to build these houses. He's already got agreement with Ryan Homes to sell 250 to 275 of the lots, plus what Eli gets for his piece of ground. And he has shown his colors for the treatment of the Matthews family. The Matthews family worked with him hand in hand to try and get something agreement. And then when the Matthews family showed up at a meeting as a private citizen and just didn't speak highly of the thing, he withdrew all of the accommodations he was making to the family. We have Sam Acker that rents the facility, leases the farm. And Rockwell gave him all assurances that they would not disturb his crops. And then, of course, as his crops are coming up, they say, well, we've got to get in here and dig test pits. And we're going to run through your corn, and that's the way it goes. You have a remedy through court and sending us a bill. We call the solicitor, call the Downingtown staff, we call the Downingtown administration, call the Downingtown board. We got crickets. No help from anybody. So if you think for a minute that anything better than that is going to happen, it's not. Now, I'm speaking as a private citizen, but I have to speak it out here for Sunshine. I can't go around and do this behind people's backs. I'm going to be saying the same thing at the supervisors meeting this month, because things are moving apace. And whether you support me or don't support it, that's where we are right now. And I don't understand why anybody would think that 500 houses, or 600 houses, and 1,000 cars on Lyle Station Road would be any good for anybody. They're not going to build warehouses. Oh gosh. You're paying $35 a square foot for that ground per warehouse space. That's before they put a shovel on the ground, before they get their engineering done or anything else. Those warehouses are already costing them $35 a square foot. They can't get rents. The other warehouse is sitting empty, and that was half the price per square foot for the ground. So don't believe warehouses. It's not going to happen, ever. Warehouses, there's too many around sitting empty now. And there's too many properties available to be converted to that if the need arose. Both here, Tredyffrin Township, East Whiteland Township, West Whiteland Township, all have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of square feet of empty buildings. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Bill, for your comment. I do have another thing to put out there. I was contacted from, well, you know what, we can adjourn this meeting.
Do you
well-
need a motion to adjourn?
No, I'll go ahead with this. Community Day is happening, and the Historical Commission is doing what they call Dare to Declare. And they're wondering if there's anybody that would be interested in reading part of the Declaration of Independence at Community Day. If anybody is interested in that, they can let me know, or let Lee Wisdom know. She's chair of the Historical Commission. So with that, all right, thank you. With that, is there any other business in front of the board? No? With that, do I have a motion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?